Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Yomi, which is Yevamos Daf Lamed Gimel. Perhaps we'll go back to the top of the Amid, B'Maika Miflagi. We're going to pick up where we left off yesterday. We were in the midst of a machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda and Bar Kapara, pertaining to three separate cases. In all three, Rabbi Yehuda says, Chayav Shtayim. This fellow is liable on two accounts. Bar Kapara says, Ein Chayav Ela Achas. What are the three cases? Number one, you have a Zar, a non-Kohen, engaged in Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash on Shabbos. Says Rabbi Yehuda, he violated two Isurim, he's Chayav Shtayim. Number one, he's a non-Kohen doing Avodah. Number two, he's doing Malach on Shabbos. Bar Kapara says he's only Chayav on account of a Zar doing Avodah. Malach on Shabbos, that's not applicable when it's a carbon in the Mikdash. That's the first case. In case number two, we have a Kohen who is a Baal Mum, a blemished fellow, unfit to do Avodah. Not only is he doing Avodah, he's actually Tameh. Says Rabbi Yehuda, Chayav Shtayim. Kohen Baal Mum and doing Avodah B'Tumah. Bar Kapara says Chayav only Achas, because Tumah is generally mutter in the Avodah Sibur in the Beis HaMikdash. In the third case, we have a Zar eating Malika, a bird which was Nimlak. It underwent the Malika procedure, which is not really the standard Shechita procedure. It's a unique process applied to a carbon. Says Rabbi Yehuda, number one, he's a Zar eating a carbon. No business doing that. Number two, for all practical purposes, it's treated like an Avela. He's chayav on account of that as well, because a non-Kohen has no heter to eat a bird which was Nimlak. Kapar says he's chayav on account of Zar, but not on account of Malika. It's not considered an Avela. After all, it's a carbon bird. Says the Gemara B'Maika Miflagi, how do we understand this machlekes? The answer is Be'isur Koilel V'Aliba de Rabbi Yosi. They're arguing about Shitas Rabbi Yosi, whether or not he applies Isur Koilel. What is Isur Koilel? We had a discussion yesterday. We started with a brayso where it seemed that Rabbi Yosi allows one Isur to be applied on the other. So you can have a double-decker Isur. Rabbi Shimon disagrees. You're only liable for one. Now, what is the context of their machlek? So, we actually have several variations of a double Isur. Isur Koilel, Isur Moisif, and Isur Bas Achas. Bas Achas will be discussed today. That's where both Isurim arrived simultaneously. We have Isur Moisif, which we discussed yesterday, and we have Isur Koilel. Briefly speaking, what is the difference between Isur Moisif and Isur Koilel? As Rashi set forth for us, the formula is as follows. The principle goes like this. Let's pick the classic example, which was presented by the Gemara yesterday. You have one Isha who has two Isurim. You have Reuven married to Rachel, Shimon married to Leah. Rachel is also to Shimon for two reasons, on two accounts. A, she's his wife's sister, Achais Isha. B, Eishes Ach, his brother's wife. Rabbi Yossi says he's Chayav Shtayim if he interacts with her inappropriately. Rabbi Shimon says no, he only Chayav one. Now, how do we illustrate Isur Moisif and Isur Koilel? The way Rashi explained it was as follows. It all depends how it happened, in what sequence things took place. Who married first? So let's say Shimon married Leah first, which resulted in Rachel being Achos Ishta. Then Reuven married Leah, married Rachel. Shimon was already Asur in Rachel. It was a pre-existing Isser because she was his sister-in-law, his wife's sister. So you would think that by marrying Reuven, you can't add another Isser with respect to Shimon and consider her also brother's wife, because she's already saturated with Isser. Achos Isha. Here we're going to apply Isser Moisef. The fact is that once Rachel marries Reuven, her Isser is sort of expanded at that point. She becomes Asr on all the other brothers of Reuven as well, on account of being their brother's wife. So the second Isser of Eshes Ach adds more. It enhances, it expands the Isser within this Isha herself. Up until this point, it was a very personal, limited, local Isser between Shimon and Rachel. By marrying Reuven, Rachel, which we call the Chefza, the Chaticha, Rashi calls her, the object of Isser, she rises to new heights, to a new level. She's Asr on so many other people as well, on account of that second event of marrying Reuven. So now it gets applied to Shimon as well. You can't stack Isurim, one on top of the other, if they're one and the same type of Isser. But here, second Isser is applicable to so many others. It's actually enhancing her Isser, her reach is broadening. It's not only limited to Reuven, to Shimon any longer. It's going out to all the brothers. That's called Isser Moisef. It adds so much more, so we can turn around and apply it to Shimon as well. What is Isser Koilel? Isser Koilel is not as potent as Isser Moisef. In Isser Moisef, the item itself intensified. The Isser in the item itself expanded. Isser Koilel means that the second event, the second Isser, will include others, other people, other items, other aspects, and on account of that, we'll say, you know what, include this one as well. For instance, if Reuven went ahead and married Rachel first, Rachel is now us on all his brothers. She is their brother's wife. Then, Shimon married Leah. Can Rachel also be considered Achois Isha? Well, if you follow the concept of Isser Koilel, the answer would be yes, because as a result of Shimon marrying Leah, it affected many other people, more people than affected before. Up until now, he was not Asr on all of Rachel's sisters, Sarah, Bilhah, and Zilpah. As a result of him marrying Leah, up until now he was not Asr on all of Leah's sisters. On account of him marrying Leah, Shimon marrying Leah, he's now Asr on all her other sisters. So the concept of Achois Isha has been introduced to all the other sisters in the family. So since the second event brought about an Isser on other people, on other items, other chatichos as Rashi calls them, that's going to draw this one in as well. It's going to bring Rachel into the fray as well, and she'll also be considered Achois Isha. So you see the difference? Moisef is where the item itself, the chaticha itself, the Isser in the item itself was enhanced and expanded. Not in the case of Isser Koilel. Here, Rachel wasn't really affected by Shimon marrying Leah, because Rachel was already Asr on Shimon. Rather, on account of Shimon marrying Leah, he became Asr on other people. Sarah and Bilhah, all the other sisters of Leah, who were Muta until that point. Perhaps we'll say, look, that Isser's Koilel will include others and include Rachel as well. Once it's been activated for the others, it's going to bring Rachel in as well. Oh. So the Gemara now will tell us that this machlokes is between Rabbi Chia and Bar Kapara in those three cases that we mentioned. Azar doing Avodah on Shabbos, Baal Mum Kain doing Avodah B'Tumah, and Azar eating Malika is perhaps revolving around this question. Does Rabbi Yossi really believe that Isser Koilel works? Then we have a case of this inclusive Isser arriving after an Isser is already there. Can that second Isser apply itself to the first Isser, and we'll end up with two? That's the point of the machlokes. Rabbi Chia Savar, Rabbi Yossi, B'Isur Koilel Mechayev Tarti, according to Rabbi Chia. Yes. In an Isur Koilel situation, Rabbi Yesi holds him doubly responsible. Bar Kapara Savar Loi Mechayev Alachada, according to Bar Kapara. Even Rabbi Yesi. In the case of Isur Koilel, no, that's not a good enough reason to add the second Isur on top of the first. Umay Isur Koilel Ika Hacha. Can you please describe, can you illustrate how we have an Isur Koilel in these three cases? Let's go down the list. We'll start from the Zar doing Malacha, doing Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash, which involves Malacha, and he's doing it on Shabbos. B'Shlema, it's fully understandable that in the case of the Zar doing the Avodah on Shabbos, it's going to be Isur Koilel. Why? Me'ikara Shari b'Malacha. Before Shabbos came around, he was fully able to do Malacha, can turn the light on and off as much as he wants. V'asr ba'avodah, but of course he can't partake in the Avodah in the Mikdash. So that Isser was pre-existing, predated Shabbos' arrival. He can't do Avodah. Asir la Shabbos. Shabbos arrives. Now we're going to see how Shabbos addresses other activities, and on account of those Isurim applied to those other activities, we're trying to sweep the Avodah related to Malacha related to Avodah into that class as well, and consider that Asr on account of Shabbos. That's going to be Isur Koilel. So again, Asr la Shabbos, when Shabbos arrives, Migudaka mitzvah b'Malacha. Since this fellow is now Asr in other Malachas, unrelated to Karbanis, he can no longer turn his light on and off. Mitzvah nami ba'Avodah will also sweep in the Avodah and include it as well. That's called Isur Koilel, since the second Isur was effective. It was effective pertaining to other activities. So it's been activated pertaining to other things. Perhaps we'll sweep this thing in as well. And now when he does Avodah related Malachas on Shabbos, he's chayiv on account of Malachas Shabbos as well, on top of the fact that he's doing Malacha as a non-Kohen. Likewise, in the second case of the Kohen Balmum doing his Avodah B'Tumah, that is also an illustration of Isur Koilel. Why? Balmum, a Kohen Balmum, Mikora Shari B'Achila. Typically, he can have Karbanis, he's allowed to eat Karbanis. Rashi says, the Pasuk clearly tells us, Umin HaKochim Yoichel, so that's mutter. Ba'asar Ba'avodah, but he can't do the service in the Mikdash. So that first Isser arrived. Why are we going to attempt to add the second Isser, the Avodah B'Tumah, on top of the first Isser? The answer is, it's an Isur Koilel. It's an all-inclusive Isur. Itamele, once the Kohen becomes Tameh, Miguduk Mitzvah B'Achila, since at that point, another Isur arrives pertaining to forbidding him from eating kachim. He can't eat kachim. So the second Isur has been activated pertaining to other aspects. Mitzvah Nami B'Avodah can come around and also affect the Avodah, and now he's Asur B'Avodah on two accounts. A, he's a Balmum. Second, he's also Tameh. So in both these cases, Rabbi Chia maintains that according to Rabbi Yesi, it's a double Isur, because Isur Koilel is effective. It's an effective way of pairing together two Isurim. Our Kapara disagrees. No, Isur Koilel is not reason enough to make him liable on two accounts. Elo Malika, but let's go to the third case. The Zar ate a bird which was Nimlak. That's not Isur Koilel. B'vas achas, he mishkachasla. That's a simultaneous arrival. Isur Koilel, lemishkachasla. It's not Isur Koilel, Rashi explains. Before Malika, this bird was not meant to be eaten. In fact, if one benefits from this bird, he's over me'ila. Nothing to do with a Zar eating a carbon. It's just the property of Hegdish. It's a totally different Isur. Once the bird is Nimlak, its head is removed, it becomes roy for a Kohen. There's no more me'ila. At this very point, at this very moment, you know what arrives? You know which Isser gets applied? Isser of Zarus. A non-Kohen may not partake in this carbon. And guess what happened at that same very moment? Isser Malika. We treat it like an Avela. So the Masa Malika activated both Issurim simultaneously. That's Vasachas. That's not Isser Koilel. That's a different story. Is it better than koil? Worse than koil? We're not getting into that. Perhaps it's better, but then it doesn't fit your bill. That's not isur koil, which should be the topic of their conversation. Elo kamifl give you isur b'vasachas. You're right. Let's switch tracks. Bar Kapara and Rabbi Chia are discussing isur b'vasachas. The question is whether Rabbi Yossi holds that isur b'vasachas brings about 2 isurim or not. Rabbi Chia Savar, he holds that Rabbi Yossi b'isur b'vasachas mechayev tati, in a simultaneous arrival of 2 isurim, he's liable on both accounts. So Bar Kapara Savar mechayev l'chadon, or even in this case, he's only chayev on one. How can you now play out the isur b'vasachas in all 3 cases? Let's see how that can happen. Let's try to picture how both isurim have a simultaneous arrival. So the first case is zor sheshimesh b'Shabbos, a non-kohen served in the mikdash and did a malach on Shabbos. He's a zor, that's one, and doing a malach on Shabbos. How can it happen at the same time? He was a katan until Shabbos. On Shabbos, he developed those pubic hairs, which make him a gadol. And now, at that very moment, he becomes responsible. The shtei saras trigger responsibility, trigger chiv on account of both things. The havilu zorus, the isra of zor doing avodah, the Shabbos, and the isra of him doing malach on Shabbos come about the same moment. Bahadi adadi. It's a simultaneous arrival of both isur, and they both work together. If something has been saturated with isur, it can't tolerate more. But if they're both coming at the same time, then they both have equal rights, and both are applied. The same to the second case. Balmum nami, he's a kohen balmum doing avodah when he's tummy. How can you have both arriving at the same time? The isur of balmum and the isur of tumah. Same idea. Could go into icy base saris v'tamale. What happened was this kohen was a balmum and became tummy, and suddenly he became a gadol. The avili balmum. So the isur of balmum doing avodah v'tumah, the isur of a tummy doing avodah, came about the same very moment. Badi adodi. Inami, another example. Shachatach hazboy b'saken tmeya. He cut his finger. He generated a mum with a impure tool, impure knife. So he became a balmum and tummy at the same time. So he sort of accepted both isurim at the same very moment. That's b'vasachas. And in the third case, we already explained, the malika generates both isurim, a zor eating a carbon and nevela at the same time. And that's the machlekes. Bakapara maintained in the name of Rebbe, right? He got up and he swore in the name of Rebbe. He told me there are 2 isurim. Bakapara likewise got up and swore, and he says, Rebbe told me only one. Now let's try to at least reconcile, figure some sort of way of explaining the discrepancy between their accounts. I mean, they were both Amirayim, Talmidim of Rebbe. How can they both heard different things from the same Rebbe? So let's try to figure this out. We say they were being chaylik in Shitas Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi, of course, was the one who was more machmer. Right? There were 2 isurim following each other. They both apply. Whereas Rabbi Shimon seemed to hold no, we don't apply to both isurim. And the way we're presenting it, the machlekes is in Rabbi Yossi, who's the machmer, whether isur b'vasachas will work. Okay, Bishleim el Rabbi Chia. Now let's understand Rabbi Chia's approach. How did he come up with this idea that Rebbe was mechayev too? Ki esnayle the day, I'll leave with Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Chia is thinking, look, and when Rebbe tells me two, it's Rabbi Yossi. It's following Shittas Rabbi Yossi the Machmer. Ki esnayle bakapara. What about what he taught my friend bakapara? Okay, I can explain that. I'll leave with Rabbi Shimon. It was Lafir Rabbi Shimon who was Mekel. That's how bakapara came up with the number 1. So, but Rabbi Chia has a way to reconcile the difference between this version of bakapara. Bakapara thought that Rebbe was addressing Shittas Rabbi Yossi, but no, actually he was addressing Shittas Rabbi Shimon, and that's why it was only 1. Elul bar kapara. But let's try to understand what bar kapara was thinking. That Rabbi says only one, and if so, Reb Chia Shekurim Kameshaka, Reb Chia is just lying. Bar kapara claimed that Rabbi taught him that even according to Rabbi Yossi the Machmer, it's only one Isser. So how in the world could Reb Chia come up with two in the name of Rabbi himself? So it's kind of hard to reconcile the discrepancy between the two versions. So how did it actually happen? Says the more, let's switch tracks again. Let's relearn their machlekes in a way which will lay this matter to rest. We'll understand why they're arguing. We'll understand where they're coming from, and perhaps reconcile the different versions. Elo kamiflagi be'isr basachas v'ali b'derab Shimon. Machlekes is whether isr basachas applies, but not according to Rabbi Yossi. According to Rabbi Shimon. Perhaps according to Rabbi Yossi, it certainly applies. The question is according to Rabbi Shimon, the Machmer. Okay, now let's see if it works. We understand why Rabbi Chia got up and he swore in excitement, because he was trying to undo this impression. Rabbi Shimon is known to be the Mekel. He limits his Isurim. And here, Rabbi Chia was trying to bring out the point that no, Isur b'vasachas is different. Both Isurim have an equal chance, an equal power, and therefore even Rabbi Shimon agrees both are chal, both are applied. That's why he got up with excitement. I want to tell you a chiddush. Elul bar kapara, but according to bar kapara, that it's just one Isur according to Rabbi Shimon. What's the excitement? Lomar leilush tabui. Why do you have to get up and swear? Everybody knows Rabbi Shimon is make kasha. We leave it unresolved. Now let's see if we can reconcile the different versions and figure out a formula. How to explain them. We understand what bar kapara is thinking. Ki asnai rebel the day. Aliba the Rabbi Shimon. He's thinking, look, I heard from Rabbi that it's only one carbon, only one Chia, because he was telling me Rabbi Shimon's approach. Ki asnai Rabbi Chia. Aliba the Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Chia heard from Rabbi too. Yeah, that's Rabbi Yossi. So it's compatible with what I'm saying, and we can reconcile the difference in different versions in the way and how they're relating Rabbi Shit. El Rabbi Chia, but according to Rabbi Chia, who says that it's two Isurim in the Isur b'vasachas according to Rabbi Shimon. Bar kapara shekuri mishaka. What's Rabbi Chia thinking about bar kapara? He's just lying. Rabbi clearly told me that according to Rabbi Shimon, even according to Rabbi Shimon, it's two Isurim. How could bar kapara say otherwise? Amalach, Rabbi Chia will tell you as follows. I have a way to explain where bar kapara is coming from. What's the root of his mistake? Let me explain. Ki yasnai rebel day tarti leftur asnai. Rabbi Chia is not making a mistake. He's not lying. He just misunderstood Rabbi. It's true that Rabbi told him P'tur. P'tur means that there's only one Isur. You can't double decker the Isurim. But the Isur Koil is Nayi. Validar Shimon. What happened was that Rabbi was just presenting him with examples, with cases where you have just an Isur Koil, which is less powerful than the Isur b'vasachas. Isur b'vasachas will both arrive at the same time. They both have equal power to land, to be applied. But Isur Koil is different, is lesser in power than Isur b'vasachas, right? So Rabbi taught bar kapara that in the case of an Isur Koil, he's patur. There's not going to be two chiyuv according to Rabbi Shimon. And in our 3 cases that we had, when Rabbi told him there's only one chiyuv, he was referring to case number 1, the zar doing malacha and avodah on Shabbos, or in case number 2, where the kohen balmum did avodah b'tumah. And in both those cases, it happens to be that it was not presented as an Isur b'vasachas. That's not what Rabbi had in mind. In the case where he had the base sa'aris, and it was triggered both Yisurim at the same time. That's not what Rabbi had in mind. Rabbi was referring to a case of Isur Koil, not Isur B'Vasachas, a case where they did not arrive at the same time. As we explained before in the beginning of the Sugya, a typical case is where it's Isur Koil. Right? A Zor is now do Malacha, and then Shabbos arrives. A Zor is now do Avodah in the Mikdash. So that arrives first, then Shabbos comes and applies itself to other types of Malacha, and therefore we include the Malacha of Avodah also. And the same thing with the Kohen Ba'amum doing Betum. That's all Rabbi meant. He meant Isur Koilil, which is less potent than Isur Vasachas. In those cases, Reb Shimon holds it's only one chiv. That's what Rabbi meant. We're speaking about Isur B'Vasachas, which is more powerful. No, it's not. Rabbi wasn't talking about it. So about Kapara misunderstood Rabbi. That's what happened. That explains it all. But of course, in the case of Isur B'Vasachas, even Reb Shimon would apply both Isurim. So again, Rabbi told them case number 1 and case number 2 in reference to Isur Koil. Now over there's only one chiv going to be applied, the first one. And what happened? What led to the misunderstanding? Here goes. The Chazil Bar Kapara, and Bar Kapara on his own contemplated. He figured, I have another example, which is very similar to those first two cases. A case that involves a kachim with 2 isurim. Case number 3, Lazar Sha'acha Malika. He was thinking about the case of the non-kohen eating a bird that was malak. And he figured, look, if I did the damila, since it's so similar to the previous two cases as a combined isur kachim related, he paired it all up, he mixed it all up, he made a comprehensive list of all these types of cases. He ended up with 3 cases, the third one of which he introduced himself. It wasn't heard in the name of Rebbe. A little while later, he sat down to think it over, and he thought it through. Now, of course, in case number 3, over there it's b'vasachas. The moment of malika triggers both isurim, the zor eating the carbon and the zor eating something which is technically an avela. So he says, in case number 3 we're dealing with vasachas. Case number 1 and number 2 must be dealing with a similar circumstance, where it happened at the same time, because Rebbe sort of taught it all. He forgot that he added it himself. He thought it was all in the name of Rebbe. And he figured since case number 3 involves a vasacha situation, hanami vasachas, likewise case number 1 and 2 are also cases where it happened at the same time. And just like Rebbe told me that in case number 1, number 2, he's pater, meaning he's only chayiv on account of the first one. Hanachnami liftur. Likewise, let me just backtrack a second. Ubadahanach liftur, and since in the third case it's pater, hanachnami liftur, likewise in the first 2 cases it's pater, even when it's b'vasachas. So you get it. That's what happened. It was like one mistake led to the next. Basically, Rebbe taught him the halacha regarding the first 2 cases, right? Zor on Shabbos and the Ba'almum Betuma. Bar Kapara on his own, by his own initiative, added a 3rd case of the Zor with the Malika. I figured, okay, he's going to be pater in that case, like in the first 2 cases. Fine, fair enough. A while later, he sits down, he contemplates. He says, in case number 3, how did it happen? How did it come about? The Malika triggered both Isurim, right? So it's B'vasachas. And it's pater, right? Because it's on the list of cases that are pater. He put it on the list himself, but now he looked at the list in its totality, and he says, case number 3 is pater, even though it's B'vasachas. So it must be that in case number 1, number 2, he's pater even when it's b'vasachas, even when the shtei saras arrived and triggered both isurim, because we're assuming that all 3 halachas match each other. And that's how we came to the conclusion that even isur b'vasachas, according to Reb Shimon, would be pater. That explains the discrepancy. That explains the different versions in what Rebbe said. This is Reb Chia speaking, of course. The true and correct version is b'vasachas, according to Reb Shimon, he's chayiv too. How do I explain where Bar Kapara is coming from? That explains it all. It was a mistake. It was a misunderstanding. Finally, says the Gemara Meisei, we're actually going to have a kash from a brisa to disprove bakapara. We're going to prove that an Issa b'Vasachas, even Rabbi Shimon agrees, he's chayav too. Zor sheshimish b'Shabbos. A Zor, a non-Kohen, who did the avodah involving malachis on Shabbos. U'ba'almum sheshimish b'tumah, a Kohen ba'almum who did the avodah b'tumah. Yesh kam mishum Zoros, or mishum Shabbos. In the first case, he's chayav for two reasons. A Zor doing the avodah and malach on Shabbos. In case number 2, you have u'mishum ba'almum mishum tumah. He did avodah ba'almum and he did it b'tumah. Divrei Rabbi Yossi. He's chayav on two accounts. Rabbi Shimon Omer ein kan ela mishum Zoros. In the first case, he's only liable for Zoros, and in the second case, u'ba'almum, because of ba'almum bilvad, that's it. Okay. Now, you realize the Brisa only discussed the first two cases. Ve'ilu malika shairi. The Brisa left out, omitted malika, the third case, because it doesn't belong here. It's a different halacha than these cases. Let's think, let's analyze. Laman shairi. In accordance with whom? The omission in the Brisa reflects whose shita. According to who is malika different? Is it Rabbi Yossi? Who in the first two cases holds him doubly accountable, and in the case of malika will not hold him accountable? That can't be. Malika is even better. That's vasachas, as we're explaining throughout the sugya. Rabbi Yossi holds him doubly accountable by an Isser Koilel, such as in the first two cases. He gets 2. Then he need to say, it goes without saying that by Malika, where it's a simultaneous double Isser, it's chayav 2. El allows Rabbi Shimon. The reason why the Brisa omitted it was to reflect Shitas Rabbi Shimon and to inform you that there's a difference between Isser Koilel, such as those two cases mentioned, and Isser Vasachas, which is certainly heavier than Koilel. Ubi Isser Koilel the Pater, only when it's a Koilel does he not hold him accountable for the second Isser. Aval be'Isser Vasachas mechayev, but in the case of Malika, where it's a simultaneous double Isser, of course he's chayev, and this is a tiyufta de bakapar. Tiyufta, this is a refutation of bakapar. So bottom line is, we have 3 cases where Rabbi Chia says chayev 2, bakapar says chayev 1. In the first attempt, it was a question of whether Rabbi Yossi is mechayev 2 by Isser Koilel. We switch tracks. We says, okay, the machlekes says by Isser Vasachas, according to Rabbi Yossi. The Maskana, it's a machlekes aliba de Rabbi Shimon by Isser Vasachas, and there's a tiyufta makapara. Now, just one thing we're trying to figure out now. We speak about Zor Sheshimish b'Shabbos. He's a Zor doing avodah, number 1, and also he's doing malacha on Shabbos. But what was he involved in, which would be considered a malacha? Ibish shchita, was it a Yisrael doing shchita? That's perfectly fine. Shchita mezor kshira, a non-kohen may do shchita. There's nothing wrong there. Viva kabbalah malacha, whether just receiving the dam and bringing it to the mizbech, that's not a malacha. At worst, it's a muktzah or something like that. Tiltul ba'amu is just moving something around. That's not something which is chayiv chatos. The Gemara figures at this point that when we speak about Rabbi Yossi being mechayiv too, he means a chatos. Ibach Torah, did he actually burn something on his beach? That wouldn't generate a chatas. Vam Rabbi Yossi, hav ora l'lav yotza. So when the Torah singles out burning and accepts it from the other malachas, that's because hav ora burning is only a lav, it doesn't create a chatas. Amr Acha bar Yaakov was speaking about a malacha as follows: B'shchita as parish shel kohen gadol. On Yom Kippur, only the kohen gadol is meant to do shchita. The Zara steps in and does shchita there. That's a malacha. In accordance with the shita, that a Zara would be puzzle on that. That's the case. So again, we're speaking about Yom Kippur, not on Shabbos, right? That's the case. Ma'ir Yizar, why discuss a Yisrael? I feel a kohen heditam, even a non-kohen gadol will have the same malacha. You're right. Shazar esla ka'amar. We're speaking about an individual who has no business being involved in this par kohen gadol, and of course it means even a kohen headed. Maskef la Rav Ashi. What's the big deal? We're looking for a chatos. Midei chatos k'tani. When we speak about chayiv shtayim, is it dafka chatos? Or you lavi k'tani or lave? Elisur ba'al m'gachashem. We're speaking about how many yisurim this fellow did. What's the big deal? Why do you have to go scavenging for chatos? We're speaking about a question of whether he did 2 yisurim or 1. Ma'af Kamina, what's the point of this discussion? L'kayvrei ben Rishayim G'morim, like we discussed yesterday. If he did 2 yisurim, and they both count, and we put them with the most severe Rishayim when burial time arrives. That's the point of the Machlekes here. Did he do 2 Isurim or 1? Whether it's for Chatois or Lavin or for Kvura. Continues the Mishnah, Shnayim shekitcher shtei nashim. 2 fellows, not necessarily brothers, but Makadesh, 2 women. Reuben to Rachel, Shimon to Leah. Ubeshas knisasam lechuppah ichlifu eshel zeh lezeh v'eshel zeh lezeh. Come time for the marriage, come time for the chuppah, it was a swap. He ended up with the other fellow's wife, and likewise the other fellow with his. What are the consequences? They're both chai because of Eshes Ish. Because unlike what we do today it's just an engagement. There's no Kiddushin until the actual day of the wedding. But here, they were already Mekadesh. Kiddushin is it's almost like marriage. She's considered his wife. So, even though they swapped before the chuppah, but they swapped their wives. They're both liable for Eshes Ish. These 2 fellows were actually brothers. There's another Isser on top of that. Each one had his brother's wife. If they were actually sisters, another Isser. Wife's sister. If they were in a Nida state, you got a 4th Isser, Mishum Nida. After this tragic event, we have to actually separate them from their husbands for a period of 3 months to discern, to verify. Shema Mubara, same concern, perhaps they're already expecting. We want to ensure the proper yichus of the future child. These were below the expecting age, so then there's no concern about offspring. They can go back to their rightful husbands immediately. However, if they were kahanis, they can no longer have truma. There's a girsa actually that says nifsulu min kahuna, which means they can't go back to their husbands despite the fact that it was a tragic mistake, as we're going to see in the Gemara. Now the Mishnah says yichlifu, which sounds like it was premeditated. Midi b'Rishi askina, we're speaking chas v'shom about Risham who would do this thing purposely. That can't be. Visu, another kash. How can it be done b'mezid? Ha, the Tani Reb Chia tells us, if you want to calculate how many chatois will be generated by this tragic swap, you can end up with 16. Harikan sheishes chatois. How? Because you have 4 isurim, Eshes Ish, Achos Isha, Eshes Achanida, and you have 4 adults involved, 2 men and 2 women, and each one will have to bring a separate chata. So you have 4 times 4 is 16. So the animal dealer has a boon on that day. So Rachi clearly says, we're speaking about chatois and even mezid. If it's a mezid, mika carb, there's no carb. That's the second right that we're not speaking about something planned. Rabbi Yehuda. Instead of ichlifu, switch it to huchlafu. It just happened. It was b'shagi. I'll prove it as such. The Tani Sefer. Look on down to the second part of the Mishnah. Im hayu ketanis. Shein and ruyas leilad. If these were children, these were ketanis. Machzir noisim yad, then go back to their husbands. V'im b'mezid. If it was something planned, mishari, that's not mutter. An isha who was engaged in znus cannot go back to her husband. Holy kash, that wouldn't be a problem because pita ketana. After all, we're speaking about a ketana, and if she was coerced into something inappropriate, oinus ninu, we treat her like an oinus. She doesn't have the ability to discern right from wrong, and we consider an oinus, and we know that for oinus be Yisrael Mishur Shari. If there was an oinus, there's no situation amongst the Yisrael, meaning a non-kohen, it does not make her usher on her husband. So that wouldn't be a riot, even if it's amazing, but since a ketana, it wouldn't affect her status. Rather, the riot is from the next part. Ella, the ketani, Mishnah says, Mafrishin Oisin Shleisha Chadashim. This is a gdoila. They have to separate for 3 months to discern the identity of the child. Shema Mubaris, I'm concerned that she's a Mubaris. Let's make a diuk. Ha lav Mubaris. But otherwise, if there wouldn't be an Ibur concern, Shari, and they can just go back immediately. Viva Mezid, meaning if it turns out, right? Sorry, if it turns out that they're not Mubaris, right, after 3 months, and go back to their husbands. Viva Mezid, if it was Bemezid, if it was as Nus Bemezid, Mishori, how can you go back to your husband? So you have a total of how many rayas that it can't be Bemezid? Firstly, are we speaking about Rishayim? Secondly, we're speaking about Karbanis. And thirdly, She would be asr to her husband. Elav shmamino, it's a clear raya huchlafu. And instead of echlifu, it was just huchlafu. It just happened shmamino. That's a clear raya that it was just b'shek. Okay, all the best to you and much hatzlacha.